Welcome to another episode of Cheating Tales Lab. We appreciate each one of you being here. Before we begin, we're wondering, where are you catching this video from? Home? Work? Let us know below. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Foundations of Sand. Devin Hargrove wiped the sweat from his brow as he surveyed the construction site. At 42, he had built Hargrove Construction from nothing into one of the most respected mid-sized firms in Millfield. His weathered hands told the story of a man who'd worked his way up from laying foundations to overseeing multi-million-dollar projects. Mr. Hargrove, the supplier called. The steel shipment will be delayed until next week, his foreman, Luis, reported. Devin nodded. Push the framing crew to Thursday then. We'll adjust. He checked his watch, 5:30 p.m. Vanessa would be finishing her evening session with Bryson, her personal trainer of the past 4 years. He'd surprise her by picking her up from the elite fitness center, maybe take her to dinner at Riverwalk Bistro for their 17th anniversary. The thought of Vanessa still made him smile. They'd met in college, he studying construction management while working nights, she pursuing business with dreams of opening a boutique. They'd married young, had their first child within a year, and 2 more followed. Clayton was now 16, Noel 14, and Wyatt 12. Being a father had been Devin's greatest joy. As he drove toward the gym, he recalled the financial struggles they'd weathered together. The recession of 2008 had nearly bankrupted them, but they'd survived. Now, with the kids' college funds growing and the business thriving, life seemed perfect. They'd finally moved into their dream home in Lakeside Estates last year. The elite fitness center's parking lot was half empty when Devin pulled in. Through the large windows, he could see various members working out, but no sign of Vanessa. Her sessions with Bryson usually ended by 5:45. Devin checked his phone, finding a text from Vanessa sent 20 minutes ago, running errands after gym. Be home by 7. Don't wait on dinner. His thumb hovered over the keyboard, ready to tell her about his surprise dinner plans, when another car caught his attention. A black Range Rover he recognized as Bryson's, parked at the far end of the lot, partially hidden by a delivery truck. Something tugged at Devin's instincts. The past few months, Vanessa had been distant, often coming home late from extended sessions or girls' nights with friends he rarely met. She'd installed a passcode on her phone, something she'd never done before. On an impulse, Devin parked out of sight and waited. 15 minutes later, Vanessa emerged from a side door, laughing, Bryson's hand resting at the small of her back in a gesture too intimate for a trainer-client relationship. They walked to the Range Rover, and before getting in, Bryson pulled Vanessa into a kiss that left no doubt about their relationship. A cold numbness spread through Devin's chest. He remained motionless as the Range Rover pulled away, his hands gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles whitened. That evening, Devin maintained a perfect facade during family dinner. He laughed at Clayton's jokes about his high school basketball coach, discussed Noel's upcoming debate tournament, and helped Wyatt with science homework, all while studying Vanessa's face for any sign of guilt or remorse. There was none. When the house grew quiet that night, Devin lay awake beside his sleeping wife, the woman he'd built a life with, wondering how long this betrayal had been going on and who else might know about it. Chapter 2. Threads Unraveling. Over the next 2 weeks, Devin became a ghost in his own life. He attended meetings, signed contracts, ate meals with his family, all while conducting a meticulous investigation into the foundations of his marriage. He hired Patterson Investigations, paying cash from the company's contingency fund. Their report confirmed his worst fears. Vanessa and Bryson had been meeting at the lakeside and twice weekly for nearly 4 years, almost as long as she'd been his client. More disturbing were the financial traces. Vanessa had a separate account containing nearly $50,000, funded by regular transfers from Bryson Phelps. The transaction notes labeled them as investment returns, but Devin knew better. At his desk after hours, Devin cross-referenced the timeline of Bryson's appearance in their lives with other events. An ugly pattern emerged. The beginning of their affair coincided almost exactly with Vanessa's sudden interest in having a 3rd child, Wyatt. The timing raised questions about all 3 children. One evening, Devin was reviewing construction bids when his phone buzzed. A text from his sister Lena. Still on for lunch tomorrow? Lena had always been close to Vanessa. Too close, perhaps. A lunch would be the perfect opportunity to subtly probe what she might know. The next day at Harborview Cafe, Lena seemed distracted, checking her phone frequently. Important messages? Devin asked casually. Oh, just work stuff, Lena said, though she didn't work on Fridays. When Lena excused herself to use the restroom, Devin, abandoning all pretense of ethical behavior, quickly reached across the table and checked her phone. What he saw shattered the last remnants of his trust. A message from Vanessa. Did you tell him anything? He's been acting strange. And Lena's reply. Nothing. Just be careful with your phone. Meeting confirmed for Monday. BP will bring papers. Devin replaced the phone before Lena returned, his mind racing. BP, Bryson Phelps. Papers. Monday. After lunch, instead of returning to the office, Devin followed Lena. She drove directly to the Elite Fitness Center, where she met Vanessa and Bryson in the parking lot. The three spoke animatedly, Vanessa gesturing frantically, while Lena appeared to be calming her down. That night, after ensuring the house was asleep, Devin accessed Vanessa's laptop. Her password hadn't changed since she'd shared it years ago to order his birthday gift. Her email revealed everything. Vanessa and Bryson were planning to leave town together after liquidating assets. A property in Costa Rica had already been purchased. Most damning was an email to a family lawyer about custody arrangements that exclude biological status. But the final blow came when Devin found a hidden folder containing years of correspondence between Vanessa, Bryson, and Lena. Among them, a message from 8 years ago that made his blood run cold. From Vanessa to Lena. Can you believe he still has no clue? 3 kids, all Brysons, and he's still saving for their college. You're the best sister-in-law for covering for us all these years. Devin sat in the dark, the blue light of the screen illuminating his face as tears silently tracked down his cheeks. Everything, 17 years of marriage, 3 children he'd thought were his, countless sacrifices, all built on lies. By morning, his tears had dried, and something harder had taken their place. Chapter 3, Winter's Reckoning. Devin moved with surgical precision over the next month. He contacted Montgomery Biotech for expedited DNA testing, using hair samples from each child. The results confirmed what he already knew: 0 genetic relation to any of the 3 children he had raised and loved. He consulted with attorney Philip Ames, a former client who specialized in divorce cases with complex financial elements, swearing him to absolute secrecy. They can't empty accounts you don't have, Philip advised. And if she's planning what you think, we need to move fast. Devin established new banking relationships with Meridian Trust, transferring company assets under the guise of restructuring for tax purposes. He liquidated personal investments, converted substantial amounts to gold and cryptocurrency, and established offshore accounts, methods he'd never considered before but now implemented with cold efficiency. Through Philip, he purchased a modest condo in Seattle under an LLC. He secured a new identity, legal but untraceable, through connections Philip wouldn't name but assured were legitimate. What about the children? Philip asked during their final meeting. Devin's expression hardened. They're not mine. Never were. But I'm leaving each of them a trust fund they can access at 25. A final gesture from a man they called father. And Vanessa? She'll get exactly what she deserves. The afternoon before Christmas, Devin withdrew $10,000 in cash, purchased the last items he needed, and checked into the Four Seasons Hotel downtown under his new identity, Roland Mitchell. At home, he behaved like the perfect husband and father, bringing home a 12-foot Christmas tree, hanging lights around the property, and preparing for their traditional Christmas Eve gathering with family friends. No one would suspect it would be his final performance in the role he'd played for 17 years. While Vanessa took the kids shopping for last-minute gifts, Devin completed his preparations. In the master bedroom safe, he placed 3 envelopes, each containing a DNA test result, along with documentation of Vanessa's affair, financial deceptions, and planned escape. He left a 4th envelope for his sister Lena. Christmas Eve unfolded with picture-perfect holiday cheer. Neighbors and friends filled their home with laughter. Vanessa played the gracious hostess, occasionally meeting Bryson's eyes across the room. He had been invited as a family friend for the past 3 years. Lena arrived late, pulling Vanessa and Bryson aside for a whispered conversation that ended with tight smiles and nods. Devin watched it all, memorizing faces, cataloging reactions for the reckoning that would come years later. After midnight, When the guests had left and the children were asleep with dreams of Christmas morning, Devin and Vanessa prepared the final gifts for under the tree. "I have an early surprise for you," Devin said, handing Vanessa a small box. Inside was a diamond bracelet she had admired months ago. Her eyes widened in genuine surprise. "It's beautiful," she whispered, guilt briefly flashing across her features. "Nothing but the best for you," Devin replied, his smile not reaching his eyes. "I have one more surprise, but that's for morning." At 4:30 a.m., while the house slept, Devin silently loaded his remaining possessions into his truck. He placed a final envelope on the kitchen counter. Inside, a letter that would lead Vanessa to the safe and its revelations. As falling snow erased his footprints, Devin Hargrove drove away from Millfield, from the life he had built, from the lies that had sustained it. In the rearview mirror, the Christmas lights of his former home grew smaller until they disappeared entirely. By dawn, when his family would be discovering the devastating truth he'd left behind, Devin Hargrove had already ceased to exist. Roland Mitchell was driving toward Seattle, toward a new beginning built on the ashes of betrayal, with vengeance simmering in his heart, a dish that would be served cold, meticulously, and without mercy. Chapter 4, Phoenix Rising. Roland Mitchell, formerly Devin Hargrove, sat in a sparsely furnished Seattle condo, staring at the skyline through rain-streaked windows. 3 months had passed since Christmas morning, when he'd left the ruins of his former life behind. Through Philip, he monitored the aftermath, Vanessa's frantic attempts to access emptied accounts, her eventual sale of the family home at a loss, and her hasty relocation with Bryson and the children to Costa Rica using what remained of their finances. The local paper had run a small story. Local businessman disappears after revealing family scandal. Lena had given a tearful interview claiming ignorance of the affair, painting Devin as unstable and vindictive. The community largely sympathized with Vanessa, the abandoned mother of 3. Roland laughed bitterly at that. He had abandoned nothing that was truly his. His phone rang, a secure line known to only 2 people. "The Costa Rica property is bleeding them dry," Philip reported. "Maintenance costs, staff, unexpected taxes, and Bryson's attempt to open a luxury gym there is failing. The novelty of being the exotic American couple has worn off." "And Lena?" "Divorced. Harrison left when the scandal broke. She's selling real estate now, barely making ends meet." Roland absorbed this information without satisfaction. It wasn't enough, not nearly enough for what they'd done. That evening, while reviewing investment opportunities, Roland received a knock at his door. Standing outside was a man in his 60s, silver-haired and impeccably dressed. "Roland Mitchell?" The man extended his hand. "Solomon Reeves. Philip suggested we meet." Over dinner at an exclusive club with a view of Puget Sound, Solomon explained his proposition. A self-made billionaire nearing retirement. He was looking for someone to take over certain aspects of his business empire, someone with intelligence, determination, and nothing to lose. "Philip told me your story, the broad strokes, not the details," Solomon said, swirling amber liquid in his glass. "Men like us, who've been betrayed by those closest to us, we see the world differently." "How were you betrayed?" Roland asked. Solomon's eyes darkened. "My wife and business partner, 30 years ago. They embezzled millions, fled to Europe. I spent 5 years hunting them down, dismantling their lives piece by piece. And then I realized revenge alone left me hollow. Building something greater than what I'd lost, that was true victory." Over the following weeks, Roland learned that Solomon had terminals in 3 major ports, significant real estate holdings, and controlling interests in technology companies developing automation systems for shipping and logistics. Most intriguingly, he owned a substantial portion of undeveloped land near Millfield, land that would become extremely valuable if the rumored interstate expansion proceeded. "Why me?" Roland asked during their 4th meeting. "You could hire anyone." Solomon studied him carefully. "Because you understand value and loss. And because I recognize that look in your eyes. The one that says you're planning something beyond mere survival." Roland didn't deny it. "I'm offering you more than employment," Solomon continued. "I'm offering you resources for whatever you're planning, in exchange for your expertise and loyalty. What if my plans don't align with your business interests?" Solomon smiled thinly. "Then we'll find the intersection where they do." By summer, Roland had moved into Solomon's inner circle, learning the intricacies of his empire while implementing improvements that increased efficiency and profitability. He absorbed knowledge voraciously: maritime regulations, international banking, technology patents, real estate development, seeing them as weapons to be wielded when the time came. In autumn, Solomon was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. The prognosis was poor. 6 months, perhaps a year, Solomon told Roland as they stood on the deck of Solomon's yacht. Which accelerates our timeline. For what? For making you my successor, of course. What followed was an intensive transfer of power, legal, financial, and personal. Solomon introduced Roland to key contacts worldwide: bankers in Switzerland, technology innovators in Silicon Valley, government officials whose campaigns he had quietly funded. "They're asking questions about your background," Solomon mentioned after one such meeting. "What did you tell them?" "That, like me, you value privacy. That, unlike me, you're the future." Solomon coughed violently, wiping blood from his lips. "And that anyone who has a problem with you will have a problem with my estate, which will continue enforcing my wishes long after I'm gone." By winter, Solomon was confined to his mansion, with Roland handling all business operations. During their evening conversations, often lasting until dawn, Solomon shared his life's wisdom, while Roland revealed more of his past and his intentions for the future. "Revenge isn't just about punishment," Solomon told him during one such night. "It's about reclaiming power that was taken from you. But remember, true power lies in choosing when not to strike as much as when to strike." Solomon Reeves died on a clear spring morning, leaving Roland Mitchell as the primary heir to his business holdings, with specific instructions for their management. The financial press speculated wildly about this unknown successor who had inherited an empire. At the private memorial service, attended by the world's elite, Roland stood alone by Solomon's casket. "I'll make it worth your faith," he whispered, "and I'll use what you've taught me to settle my accounts." That night, in Solomon's study, now his, Roland opened a file containing everything he'd learned about Millfield in the past year. Mayor Calvin Prescott had approved zoning changes that would make the interstate expansion all but certain. Property values would skyrocket. It was time to begin the next phase of his plan. Chapter 5: Forging the Blade. 5 years after his disappearance from Millfield, Roland Mitchell had transformed Solomon's empire into something even more formidable. Reeves Mitchell Holdings now controlled key infrastructure and real estate across the Pacific Northwest, with tentacles extending into emerging markets worldwide. Roland himself had changed just as dramatically. Gone was the construction worker's weathered ruggedness, replaced by the polished exterior of a corporate titan. His once dark hair now showed distinguished silver at the temples, and he'd cultivated a trimmed beard that altered his appearance enough to provide initial anonymity when needed. His body, once powerful from physical labor, was now honed through martial arts training, a practice Solomon had recommended for discipline of mind as much as body. But beneath the expensive suits and refined manners, the core of cold rage remained, preserved like an insect in amber, waiting for release. Through his extensive network, Roland monitored the lives of those who had betrayed him. Vanessa and Bryson's Costa Rica dream had crumbled within 2 years. They'd returned to the States, settling in Phoenix, where Bryson scraped by as an employee at a commercial gym while Vanessa worked in retail. Their relationship had deteriorated under financial strain, with frequent separations followed by reconciliations. The children, now young adults, had scattered, Clayton attending community college, Noel working as a bartender, and Wyatt still in high school, living primarily with Vanessa. Lena had never recovered from the scandal. After losing her real estate license due to ethical violations, she'd moved from job to job, her reputation in tatters. Roland observed it all with clinical detachment, recognizing their struggles as merely the prelude to what he had planned. Natural consequences weren't enough. He wanted to be the architect of their downfall. Under the guise of expanding Reeves Mitchell Holdings, Roland systematically acquired properties and businesses throughout Millfield and surrounding areas. Using shell companies and proxies, he purchased the building housing Bryson's former gym, the office complex where Lena had once worked, and eventually, strategic properties throughout downtown Millfield. His most significant acquisition came when he learned through industry channels that Mayor Prescott had secretly fast-tracked approval for the interstate expansion positioning certain developers to profit enormously. Using this information, Roland quietly secured options on critical parcels along the planned route, then leveraged this position to force the major development company into a partnership. "You've cornered the market before they even knew there was a market to corner," remarked Diane Wu, his chief financial officer and one of the few people he trusted. "It's about seeing the board when others are focused on single pieces," Roland replied, a lesson Solomon had drilled into him. By year 7 of his self-imposed exile, Roland's wealth had grown to billions, with significant holdings concentrated in and around Millfield. The town that had once been his home was now, unknowingly, largely under his control. It was during this period that Roland began the final preparations for his return. He established a new headquarters for Reeves Mitchell's Pacific Northwest operations, a gleaming tower of glass and steel on the outskirts of Millfield, visible from the interstate. Local news celebrated the economic opportunity, unaware of who really controlled the company. Roland cultivated relationships with Millfield's current power brokers, always through intermediaries, positioning himself as a mysterious benefactor interested in the town's development. Anonymous donations revitalized the community center, funded school programs, and established a medical clinic in the underserved East Side. "These people destroyed your life," Diane observed during one strategy session. "Why improve their town?" "I'm not improving it for them," Roland answered. "I'm setting the stage." A magician directs your attention exactly where he wants it before the real trick begins. 8 months before his planned return, Roland implemented the next phase. Through a series of strategic investments and leveraged buyouts, Reeves Mitchell acquired control of Millfield's primary employer, Westland Manufacturing, saving it from bankruptcy and securing the livelihoods of hundreds of residents. The town hailed the company as its savior. Mayor Prescott, seeking re-election, publicly invited the CEO of Reeves Mitchell Holdings to Millfield's centennial celebration, hoping to bask in the reflected glory of the town's economic revival. "Will you accept?" asked Thomas Sharp, Roland's security chief and another trusted confidant. Roland's smile was cold. "I wouldn't miss it for the world." In the final months, Roland accelerated his preparations. He purchased the most impressive estate in Millfield, a modernist mansion overlooking the lake, visible from his old neighborhood. He arranged for Bryson Phelps to be offered a management position at a national fitness chain opening in Millfield, with relocation assistance that would ensure his return. Through third parties, he facilitated Vanessa's hiring at an upscale boutique in the newly renovated downtown shopping district. Most carefully orchestrated was his approach to Lena. Struggling financially in a nearby city, she received an offer to manage a new charitable foundation in Millfield, one ostensibly funded by Reeves Mitchell as part of its community engagement initiative. One by one, the pieces of Roland's chess game moved into position, drawn by opportunity, unaware they were being lured into a carefully constructed web. 10 years after disappearing from Millfield, Roland Mitchell, now universally known as the billionaire successor to Solomon Reeves, prepared to return to the town that had witnessed Devin Hargrove's greatest humiliation. He stood before the mirror in his Seattle penthouse, studying the face that had been transformed by time, wealth, and purpose. "It's time," he told his reflection. "Time for accounts to be settled." Chapter 6. The Prodigal Returns. The July sun beat down on Millfield's town square as crowds gathered for the centennial celebration. Banners proclaiming 100 years of community fluttered in the breeze, and local vendors lined the perimeter selling everything from artisanal crafts to fair food. At the center of it all stood Mayor Calvin Prescott, perspiring beneath the collar of his suit as he checked his watch repeatedly. The mysterious CEO of Reeves Mitchell Holdings, the company that had revitalized Millfield's economy, was scheduled to make his first public appearance in the town, and Prescott had built much of his re-election campaign around this partnership. A murmur rippled through the crowd as 3 black SUVs pulled up to the square. Security personnel in discreet earpieces established a perimeter as the door of the middle vehicle opened. Roland Mitchell emerged, immaculate in a tailored charcoal suit, surveying the scene with measured confidence. Those who had known Devin Hargrove might have caught a fleeting resemblance, something in the set of his jaw or the intensity of his gaze. But 10 years, substantial physical changes, and the distorting lens of expectation ensured no immediate recognition. Mayor Prescott rushed forward, hand extended. Mr. Mitchell, what an honor to finally meet you in person. Millfield welcomes you with open arms. Roland smiled, a practiced expression that revealed nothing. The honor is mine, Mayor. Solomon always spoke highly of this region's potential. As they walked toward the stage, Roland scanned the crowd methodically. Near the front, he spotted Lena, looking professional but anxious in her role as the new foundation director. Her gaze was fixed on him with the intensity of someone trying to place a half-remembered face. Vanessa wasn't present. She would be working at Luminous, the boutique where Roland had arranged her employment through a series of proxies. Bryson, however, stood near the back of the crowd, his athletic build slightly softened by age, wearing the polo shirt embroidered with the logo of Supreme Fitness, where he now served as regional manager. The children, no longer children, were scattered throughout town. Clayton worked at the technology store in the mall. Noel had secured a position at an upscale restaurant downtown, and Wyatt was preparing to begin college courses in the fall. All the key players in place, unaware they were characters in a drama scripted years in advance. Mayor Prescott's introduction was effusive, highlighting Reeves Mitchell's investments in the town and the prosperity they had brought. When Roland took the microphone, a hush fell over the crowd. Millfield holds a special place in my company's vision, Roland began, his voice carrying across the square. Some might call it an unlikely choice for our regional headquarters, but I see something here that others missed: resilience, character, and untapped potential. As he spoke, Roland noticed Lena's expression shift from curiosity to confusion to the first flickers of alarm. She was beginning to see past the beard, the styled hair, the refined mannerisms, beginning to recognize the ghost of the brother-in-law she had helped betray. Today, I'm announcing the establishment of the Reeves Mitchell Foundation, with an initial endowment of $50 million dedicated to Millfield's continued development, Roland continued, triggering applause throughout the crowd. But beyond financial investment, I'm making a personal commitment. Effective immediately, I'll be relocating to Millfield to oversee our operations here directly. The announcement caused a stir of excitement. Having a billionaire take up residence would further elevate the town's profile. Mayor Prescott practically beamed beside him. My company believes in accountability and second chances in equal measure, Roland added, a steely undertone entering his voice that only those who knew him well might recognize. In the coming months, you'll see that philosophy in action throughout Millfield. After the speech, during the reception at Town Hall, Roland circulated among Millfield's elite, charming and insightful, offering observations about regional economics that subtly demonstrated how closely he'd been monitoring the area. He pointedly avoided direct contact with Lena, though he ensured she remained in his line of sight, watching her increasing discomfort with private satisfaction. As the evening wound down, Mayor Prescott personally escorted Roland to his waiting vehicle. We've arranged a welcome dinner next week at Bellamy's, the mayor said. All the town's leading citizens will attend. I look forward to it, Roland replied. But first, I'd like to familiarize myself with the town. Perhaps you could arrange a comprehensive tour, including some of the less prosperous areas? I believe in understanding communities from all angles. Of course, Prescott agreed eagerly. My office will coordinate everything. As Roland's SUV pulled away, he reclined against the leather seat, reviewing the day's events. Phase 1 had been executed flawlessly, his presence established, his power demonstrated, the first seeds of recognition and unease planted. His phone buzzed with a text from Thomas Sharp. L made 3 calls after the speech. V, B, and a number registered to C. All brief, all distressed. Roland smiled. Lena had recognized him, or at least suspected enough to warn the others. Good. Let them feel the first tremors of the earthquake he had planned. The next morning, Roland began establishing his visible presence in Millfield. He took breakfast at the popular downtown cafe, where he knew Vanessa would pass on her way to work. He toured the shopping district, briefly entering Luminous, while Vanessa assisted another customer. Their eyes met momentarily, hers professional and unrecognizing, his deliberately unreadable. Later, he visited Supreme Fitness under the pretense of considering a corporate membership program for his employees. Bryson himself conducted the tour, obsequious and eager, never suspecting he was explaining facility features to the man whose life he had destroyed. Each encounter was calculated, each interaction a piece of psychological warfare. Roland knew they would compare notes, trying to determine if this powerful newcomer was indeed the man they had betrayed a decade ago. Their uncertainty was a weapon in itself. By week's end, Roland had been seen throughout Millfield, generating excitement and speculation with each appearance. His mansion overlooking the lake became the subject of local fascination, particularly when observant residents noticed it offered a direct view of the more modest neighborhood where the Hargrove family had once lived. At the welcome dinner at Bellamy's, Roland found himself seated across from Lena, who had clearly been struggling with whether to attend. Her complexion was pale, her movements jittery. During the third course, Roland addressed her directly for the first time. "Ms. Wilcox, I understand you're heading our new foundation. Your background seems diverse." Lena's wine glass trembled slightly. "Yes, I've worked in various capacities throughout the region, including real estate, I believe." Before certain ethical complications arose. Roland's tone remained pleasant, but his eyes held hers with unmistakable intensity. Around them, conversation continued, no one noticing the tension between them except Thomas Sharp, positioned at a nearby table. That was a misunderstanding," Lena stammered. "I find there are few true misunderstandings in life," Roland replied. "Merely consequences we're unprepared to face." He raised his glass in a toast. "To clarity, Ms. Wilcox. May we all achieve it eventually." Later that night, after the other guests had departed, Roland lingered, engaging Mayor Prescott in conversation about the town's history. Deliberately, he steered the topic toward notable events of the past decade. "I recall reading something about a local businessman who disappeared. Quite the scandal, wasn't it?" Roland asked innocently. Prescott, loosened by several glasses of bourbon, nodded vigorously. "Hargrove, yes. Devin Hargrove. Terrible business. Left on Christmas morning, can you imagine? After discovering his wife's affair with her trainer. Even left DNA tests proving the children weren't his." "How devastating," Roland commented. "What became of them? The wife and the trainer, was it?" "They're actually back in town now," Prescott said, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "The economy in Millfield is better than most places, thanks to you. They both work downtown. Keep a low profile, though. The scandal never quite washed off." "And the man, Hargrove? Was he ever found?" Prescott shook his head. "Vanished completely. Some say he started a new life abroad. Others think, well, darker outcomes. Man loses everything like that. Who knows what he might do?" Roland nodded thoughtfully. Who indeed? As his car pulled away from Bellamy's, Roland opened his laptop to review the latest reports from his security team. Each person who had betrayed him was now under discreet surveillance. Their movements tracked, their communications monitored, their vulnerabilities cataloged. The foundation had been laid. The players assembled. Now the real game could begin. Roland Mitchell, once Devin Hargrove, looked out at the twinkling lights of Millfield below his hilltop mansion. From this height, the town resembled a scale model, its residents like figurines to be manipulated at will. "And so it begins," he murmured to himself. Chapter 7, Opening Gambit. 2 months after his arrival in Millfield, Roland Mitchell had become the town's most influential figure. His presence at community events was celebrated, his business insights sought by local entrepreneurs, his philanthropy praised in the regional press. From this position of strength, he began the systematic dismantling of those who had betrayed him. The first move was subtle. During a board meeting of the Reeves-Mitchell Foundation, Roland casually mentioned inconsistencies in the accounting procedures implemented by Lena Wilcox. Nothing substantial, he assured the other board members, but in matters of financial governance, precision is paramount. Let's bring in auditors for a thorough review, standard procedure in all my organizations. The audit revealed no actual improprieties, but the process itself subjected Lena to intense scrutiny and stress. Each night after grueling interviews with the audit team, she would return home to her modest apartment, increasingly convinced that her brother-in-law had returned to torment her. Twice she attempted to schedule private meetings with Roland, and twice his office politely rescheduled before ultimately declining, citing his overwhelming commitments. This deliberate avoidance was calculated to increase her anxiety, the psychological equivalent of letting a fish exhaust itself on the line. Meanwhile, Roland implemented the second phase of his plan. Through a holding company, he acquired the mortgage on Bryson's recently purchased home, a property he had stretched himself financially to obtain, seeking to recapture some semblance of the luxury he had briefly enjoyed in Costa Rica. Simultaneously, Roland arranged for Supreme Fitness to be acquired by a national chain that was secretly controlled by Reeves Mitchell Holdings. The subsequent restructuring resulted in Bryson being transferred to a significantly less prestigious position at a franchise location in a declining shopping center, with a corresponding reduction in salary. The mortgage company, acting on Roland's invisible instructions, denied Bryson's request for refinancing, citing his decreased income and prior credit issues. The financial pressure began to mount precisely as designed. For Vanessa, Roland orchestrated a different approach. He arranged for Luminous to be selected as the exclusive provider of corporate gifts for Reeves Mitchell's regional operations, a substantial opportunity that placed Vanessa in direct contact with his company's demanding procurement team. For the first time in years, her retail expertise was truly valued, her previously stagnant career seemingly revitalized. "She's working overtime to meet our orders," Thomas reported during their evening briefing at Roland's estate. Bryson's growing resentful of her success while he struggles. Roland nodded, satisfied. "And the children?" "Clayton is responding well to the tech mentorship program you established. He has no idea you personally selected him based on his application. Noel's restaurant has been booked for 3 corporate events next month. Wyatt received the anonymous scholarship to state." "Perfect," Roland replied. "They're not culpable for their mother's sins, but they're useful pressure points nonetheless." Thomas hesitated. "Sir, if I may, what exactly is your endgame with these people?" Roland moved to the window, looking out over the lake that separated his mansion from his former neighborhood. "They took everything from me, Thomas. My marriage, my children, my identity, my trust. They conspired for years, laughing at my ignorance while I worked myself to exhaustion providing for them." His reflection in the glass showed a cold smile. "Now I control their livelihoods, their homes, their futures, and they don't even realize it yet. But they will." 3 days later, Roland hosted a gala fundraiser for the Millfield Hospital expansion, an event attended by everyone of consequence in town. He had arranged for Noel to be among the serving staff, for Luminous to provide gift bags for the guests, and for Lena to give a brief presentation about the Foundation's health initiatives. As Lena spoke nervously from the podium, Roland studied her, noting the shadows beneath her eyes, the slight tremor in her hands. When she finished, he approached her, speaking softly enough that only she could hear. "You look unwell, Lena, almost as if you're carrying a burden too heavy to bear." Her eyes widened in recognition and fear. "It is you," she whispered. Roland smiled pleasantly for any observers. "How is Vanessa these days? Still crafting elaborate deceptions, or has she found new hobbies?" "Devin," Lena began. "That man no longer exists." Roland cut her off, steel beneath his cordial tone. "You and your sister made sure of that. But I'm curious, was it worth it? Helping destroy a decent man who trusted you both?" Before she could respond, Roland turned to greet Mayor Prescott, leaving Lena visibly shaken. Throughout the evening, he maintained his role as the charming host while strategically positioning himself to observe the ripple effects of his presence. Later that night, Lena made 4 panicked phone calls to Vanessa, Bryson, and 2 of the children. By morning, Roland's surveillance team reported increased activity at all their residences. The prey was stirring, sensing the predator's presence but unable to escape the invisible cage he had constructed around them. The following week brought the first direct confrontation. Vanessa appeared at Roland's office, having leveraged her position as Luminous corporate account manager to secure a meeting under the pretense of discussing the upcoming holiday gift packages. Roland allowed her to be escorted into his spacious office, watching impassively as recognition dawned on her face. "My God," she whispered. "It is you." Roland gestured to a chair across from his desk. "Vanessa, you look older." She remained standing, shock giving way to apprehension. "What are you doing here? After all this time?" "Building an empire," Roland replied calmly. "What are you doing here, besides living in the wreckage of your decisions? If you've come for revenge." "Revenge?" Roland's laugh held no humor. "Such a limited concept. I've moved beyond such simplistic notions." "Then why come back? Why all this?" She gestured vaguely at the trappings of wealth surrounding them. Roland leaned forward, his mask of civility slipping for just a moment. Because I wanted you to see what you sacrificed. The life you could have had if you'd been worthy of loyalty. He paused, letting the words sink in. How is Bryson? Still the man of your dreams? Or has reality proven disappointing? Vanessa's composure faltered. Leave us alone, Devin. It's been 10 years. Roland, he corrected. Devin died on Christmas morning a decade ago. You attended the funeral, as I recall, celebrated it, even. He pressed a button on his desk. Ms. Chun, please escort Ms. Hargrove out. Our business is concluded. As security led Vanessa away, Roland noted with satisfaction the fear that had replaced her initial defiance. The first direct acknowledgement had been made. The game was now in the open. That evening, as expected, Bryson appeared at Roland's estate, having bullied his way past the gate security. Roland watched on the security monitors as Thomas intercepted him in the circular driveway. Mr. Mitchell doesn't receive unscheduled visitors, Thomas stated firmly. Tell that bastard I know who he is. Bryson shouted. Tell him to face me like a man. Roland activated the intercom. By all means, Mr. Phelps. Come face me like a man. An interesting choice of words, considering your history. Bryson was escorted to Roland's study, his anger barely contained. Once alone, Bryson launched into accusations and threats that Roland observed with detached amusement. Are you finished? Roland asked when Bryson finally paused for breath. Because I've been waiting 10 years to have this conversation, and I'd prefer it to be productive. What do you want from us? Bryson demanded. From you? Nothing. You're insignificant. Roland rose, walking to a sidebar to pour himself a drink. You were merely the instrument of Vanessa's betrayal, a convenient tool. Then why come back? Why take my job, my status? Roland's eyebrows raised slightly. Take them? I've given you employment, housing, opportunity. The fact that you failed to thrive is hardly my responsibility. You're playing games with our lives. No, Bryson. I'm simply watching natural consequences unfold. Roland's voice hardened. Did you really think you could build happiness on a foundation of betrayal? That deceiving a man for years, taking his children, mocking his ignorance would lead to a fulfilling life. Bryson's expression shifted from anger to unease. How did you know about? I know everything, Roland interrupted. Every text, every rendezvous, every laugh at my expense. I've had 10 years to uncover every detail of your sordid little conspiracy. The children are not mine, Roland finished for him. As you well know, though I find it interesting that you've largely abandoned your parental responsibilities to them as well. 3 children, all yours biologically. Yet when was the last time you spoke to Clayton? Or attended one of Noel's events? Your pattern of betrayal extends to your own blood. Bryson sank into a chair, his bluster deflating. What are you going to do? Roland smiled coldly. Nothing you can prepare for. Nothing you can prevent. But I promise you this. By the time I'm finished, you'll understand exactly what it feels like to lose everything that matters. After Bryson's departure, Roland received reports of an emotional confrontation between Vanessa and Bryson at their home, followed by Bryson spending the night at a motel. The pressure was building precisely as planned. Simultaneously, Roland accelerated other aspects of his strategy. The national chain holding Supreme Fitness announced its Millfield location would be closed for reimagining, leaving Bryson's professional future uncertain. Luminous received a substantial order for the upcoming holiday season, ensuring Vanessa would be too preoccupied with work to effectively counter his moves. Most significantly, through careful manipulation of the foundation board, Lena was placed on administrative leave pending a more thorough investigation of organizational concerns, effectively isolating her from her support system and income. As autumn deepened in Millfield, Roland's web tightened around those who had betrayed him. Each was experiencing the consequences of his return differently, but with increasing severity, unaware that what they had endured thus far was merely the opening gambit in a game designed for total victory. Chapter 8. The Depths of Winter. December arrived in Millfield with unseasonable bitterness, bringing freezing temperatures and icy winds that mirrored the escalating Cold War between Roland Mitchell and the family that had betrayed Devin Hargrove. At Roland's direction, the screws had tightened methodically over the autumn months. Bryson, unemployed after the indefinite postponement of Supreme Fitness's reopening, had taken to drinking heavily. His relationship with Vanessa deteriorated further with each rejection letter from potential employers, all positions subtly influenced by Roland's far-reaching network. Vanessa, meanwhile, found herself promoted to regional buyer for Luminous, a seemingly prestigious position that required extensive travel, further straining her already fractured home life, while keeping her too preoccupied to recognize the larger pattern forming around her. Lena, suspended from the foundation and unable to secure new employment, had depleted her savings and faced imminent eviction. Her increasingly desperate attempts to contact Roland were systematically blocked, each rejection precisely calculated to maximize her sense of helplessness. The children, now adults, were experiencing mixed fortunes by design. Clayton had been offered an entry-level position at a Reeves-Mitchell technology subsidiary, a golden opportunity that created tension with his struggling father. Noelle's restaurant had become the preferred venue for corporate events, her career flourishing while her parents' relationship crumbled. Only Wyatt remained somewhat insulated, away at college but increasingly concerned by the disturbing family updates he received. Roland observed it all with cold satisfaction from his hilltop mansion, like a chess master watching pieces align for checkmate. "Your measures have been effective," Thomas reported during their weekly security briefing. Bryson missed his mortgage payment for the second consecutive month. "Foreclosure procedures will begin after the third." Roland nodded. "And Lena?" "Selling personal belongings online. She's attempted to contact Vanessa 16 times in the past week, but receives minimal response due to Vanessa's travel schedule." "Excellent." Roland reviewed the surveillance photos spread across his desk. "It's time for the next phase. The Christmas Gala." Reeves-Mitchell's holiday celebration had become Millfield's most anticipated social event. Scheduled for December 23rd, exactly 1 day short of the 10-year anniversary of Devon's disappearance, the symbolism was deliberate and would not be lost on those who had betrayed him. Invitations were extended to Millfield's elite, including, by Roland's specific instruction, Vanessa, as Luminous representative, Clayton, as a company employee, and Noelle, whose restaurant was catering part of the event. Bryson and Lena were conspicuously excluded, their absence designed to heighten their isolation. The night of the gala arrived with picture-perfect winter conditions, fresh snow blanketing Roland's estate, white lights twinkling along the winding driveway, ice sculptures gleaming in the garden. The mansion was transformed into a winter wonderland that left guests breathless as they arrived. Roland greeted each arrival personally, resplendent in a tailored tuxedo, the perfect host with seemingly inexhaustible charm. When Vanessa appeared, alone, tense, and uncertainly navigating her dual role as vendor and target, he welcomed her with practiced cordiality that only heightened her discomfort. "You look lovely this evening," he told her, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. Then, lowering his voice, "The worry doesn't suit you." It never did. Throughout the evening, Roland orchestrated a series of subtle confrontations. He introduced Clayton to business contacts as a promising young man overcoming significant disadvantages in his upbringing, and referred to Noelle as remarkably resilient despite complicated family circumstances, comments that appeared complimentary to outsiders but cut deeply for their intended targets. Near midnight, as the celebration reached its peak, Roland climbed the grand staircase and signaled for attention. Raising a champagne flute, he addressed the assembled guests. 10 years ago tomorrow," he began, his voice carrying through the suddenly quiet hall, "I experienced a profound personal transformation. The details are private, but the outcome is the man you see before you today." His gaze found Vanessa in the crowd, then Clayton, then Noelle. "I learned that family, true family, is built on honesty, loyalty, and mutual respect." He paused deliberately. "And I learned that those who betray such sacred trusts eventually face consequences, whether immediately or delayed." A murmur ran through the gathering, most guests interpreting his words as inspirational rather than threatening. Only those who knew the truth recognized the steel beneath his rhetoric. Tomorrow, Reeves-Mitchell will announce a significant reorganization affecting many in this room. For some, it will bring unprecedented opportunity. For others, his smile was razor-sharp, appropriate outcomes. "I believe deeply in cosmic balance, that eventually we all receive exactly what we deserve." After the toast, Roland mingled briefly before excusing himself, leaving the party at its height. A calculated exit that allowed him to observe the aftermath from his private study via the security system. As expected, Vanessa sought out her children, their body language displaying increasing distress as they conversed in a quiet corner. Clayton appeared defensive, Noel tearful. When they departed separately shortly afterward, none of them smiled. The following morning, Christmas Eve, exactly 10 years after Devin Hargrove had disappeared, Roland's plan culminated in a series of precisely timed events. At 8 a.m., Bryson Phelps received formal foreclosure proceedings on his home, along with a detailed dossier containing evidence of his decade-old betrayal, including previously unseen text messages, emails, and financial records that Devin had compiled before his disappearance. At 8:30 a.m., Lena's landlord delivered an eviction notice, accompanied by a similar dossier documenting her role in the conspiracy, including recordings of conversations where she had mocked her brother-in-law's ignorance while actively helping conceal the affair. At 9 a.m., while traveling for work in Seattle, Vanessa received multiple urgent messages, from Bryson regarding the foreclosure, from Lena about the eviction, and from her children expressing confusion and anger over revelations they'd begun receiving from anonymous sources about their parentage and their mother's deceptions. Simultaneously, each of them received an identical message from an unknown number, the lake house. Noon. Final opportunity for resolution. At precisely noon, as a snowstorm intensified over Millfield, Vanessa's car pulled into Roland's circular driveway, followed shortly by Bryson's truck and Lena's aging sedan. Clayton arrived next, then Noel. Wyatt, having received the same message at college, joined via video call that appeared automatically on their phones. Thomas escorted them not to the main house, but to the glass-walled pavilion overlooking the frozen lake, a strategic choice that offered a direct view of their old neighborhood across the water and ensured they would feel exposed, vulnerable, contained. Roland made them wait 30 minutes in silence before entering, another calculated move to increase anxiety and tension among them. When he finally appeared, the transformation from Devin Hargrove to Roland Mitchell was momentarily stripped away, allowing them to fully recognize the man they had betrayed. 10 years ago today, he began without preamble. I discovered the extent of your betrayal. 3 children who weren't mine. A sister who helped hide the affair. A wife and her lover laughing at my ignorance while I worked to support you all. He moved to the center of the room, commanding their attention. Today, you discover the extent of mine. One by one, Roland detailed what he had orchestrated: Bryson's career destruction and impending homelessness, Lena's professional ruin and financial devastation, the systematic manipulation of the children's careers and educational opportunities, Vanessa's exhausting promotion that had kept her too busy to recognize the pattern until it was too late. You took everything from me, Roland continued, his voice terrifyingly calm. My identity, my family, my trust. I've spent a decade ensuring I could take everything from you in return. What do you want from us? Vanessa asked, her voice barely a whisper. Want? Nothing. This isn't a negotiation. It's a reckoning. Roland's smile was devoid of warmth. Bryson, you'll receive official notice by end of day that you're being sued for alienation of affection, an old-fashioned concept, but still legally valid in this state. The documentation is extensive, the financial penalties ruinous. Bryson paled. You can't. Lena, Roland continued as if Bryson hadn't spoken. The Foundation Board has voted unanimously to pursue criminal charges for the discrepancies our audit uncovered. Minor technical violations, perhaps, but sufficient to ensure you'll never hold a position of trust again. Those discrepancies were planted. Lena protested. I never. Vanessa. Roland overrode her. Luminous parent company will announce its bankruptcy tomorrow, an unfortunate casualty of market forces that I may have influenced. Your position, like your marriage, was built on false premises and is equally unsustainable. He turned lastly to the children, Clayton and Noel physically present, Wyatt on the video screen. You 3 are perhaps the only innocent parties in this saga, born of deception through no fault of your own. His expression softened fractionally. For that reason, your trust funds remain intact, accessible when you're 25 as originally established. My quarrel isn't with you. Clayton stepped forward angrily. You've been manipulating our lives, our careers. I've been offering opportunities, Roland corrected. What you do with them is your choice. Unlike the choices that were taken from me regarding your parentage. Snow lashed against the glass walls, turning the pavilion into an isolated snow globe separated from the outside world. Within this controlled environment, Roland had orchestrated his final act of retribution, not through violence or direct harm, but through the systematic deconstruction of the lives they had built in his absence. Is this what you became? Vanessa asked, tears streaming down her face. This monster who destroys lives for revenge. Roland's expression hardened. I became what was necessary to balance the scales. Every opportunity you've lost, every humiliation you've suffered, every moment of uncertainty and fear, I experienced tenfold when I discovered your betrayal. It was wrong, Vanessa admitted, her voice breaking. What we did was unforgivable. But this, destroying everyone, controlling our lives like puppets, how does this make you any better? Better. Roland repeated the word as if it were foreign. This was never about being better. This was about consequences. About justice delayed but not denied. For several moments, the only sound was the howling wind outside and muffled sobs from Lena. Then Noelle spoke, her voice steady despite her tears. What happens now? Roland surveyed the broken family before him, the physical manifestation of a decade's planning reaching its culmination. Now, you leave. You rebuild if you can, or you don't. Your fates are no longer my concern. He moved toward the door, then paused. Except for one final detail. From his pocket, he withdrew a small remote and pressed a button. On the pavilion's screens, documentation appeared, property deeds, bank records, investment portfolios. Over the past decade, I've acquired controlling interest in nearly everything of value in Millfield, from the real estate you live on to the businesses where you work to the restaurants where you eat. This town that welcomed you back after your disgrace, that provided refuge when your Costa Rican paradise collapsed, now answers to me. The implications landed heavily. They were trapped in a community where Roland's influence was nearly absolute, yet unable to afford starting over elsewhere. Merry Christmas, Roland said coldly. Consider this my gift, the knowledge that wherever you go in Millfield, whatever you do so in the shadow of what could have been, had you chosen loyalty over betrayal. With that, he left them in the glass pavilion, returning to his mansion as the storm intensified, perfectly mirroring the devastation he had unleashed upon those who had once destroyed his life. Chapter 9. Ashes and Empire. Spring arrived in Millfield with a vibrancy that belied the emotional wasteland Roland Mitchell had created for those who had betrayed him. 3 months had passed since the Christmas Eve confrontation, and the consequences he had orchestrated continued to unfold with mathematical precision. Bryson Phelps had fled Millfield in February, abandoning both the foreclosed house and his relationship with Vanessa. Last located in Tucson, working as a personal trainer at a budget gym, he struggled under the mounting legal fees from Roland's alienation of affection lawsuit, a case strategically prolonged to maximize financial drain rather than seeking rapid resolution. Lena had avoided criminal charges only by accepting a punitive settlement that left her financially destitute. She now lived in a subsidized senior apartment complex on Millfield's outskirts, working part-time at a convenience store, a position Roland had arranged through proxies to ensure she remained in town, a living reminder of consequences. Vanessa, perhaps most dramatically transformed, had lost everything: job, relationship, home, and standing in the community. After a brief stay with Noelle, she had moved into a modest one-bedroom apartment and found employment at a chain pharmacy, where her once polished appearance had gradually yielded to premature aging accelerated by stress and regret. The children had scattered to various degrees of estrangement. Clayton had resigned from his position at the Reeves-Mitchell subsidiary and moved to Portland, cutting contact with both parents. Noelle maintained limited communication with her mother, but avoided family gatherings. Only Wyatt maintained regular contact with Vanessa, though his visits home from college had grown increasingly uncomfortable as he struggled to reconcile the family mythology with the harsh revelations of the past months. Roland observed these outcomes with detached satisfaction from his position as Millfield's de facto ruler. Reeves-Mitchell Holdings had expanded its local influence, acquiring the regional hospital, launching a technology incubator, and breaking ground on a luxury residential development along the lakeshore. His wealth had multiplied, his reputation soared, his public persona celebrated as Millfield's savior. Yet despite achieving everything he had planned, Roland found victory oddly hollow. The sustained ruination of his betrayers brought diminishing satisfaction, like a once sweet fruit turning dry and tasteless. This realization crystallized during a private dinner with Mayor Prescott and selected town councilors at Roland's estate. As they discussed the proposed arts center Roland had offered to fund, he found himself watching their sycophantic behavior with something approaching contempt. These people feared him, respected his power, coveted his patronage, but none knew him. None could know him. Later that evening, after his guests had departed, Roland stood on his balcony overlooking the lake. The same waters that had reflected a younger Devon Hargrove's hopes now mirrored only the cold isolation of Roland Mitchell's triumph. Was it worth it? He asked the empty night. The question lingered unanswered as April's warm breeze carried the scent of new growth across the water. The following day, Roland found himself unexpectedly face-to-face with Vanessa at Millfield's annual spring festival. He had been touring the artisan booths with Thomas when she appeared around a corner, equally startled by the encounter. For a moment, neither spoke, the festival crowd flowing around them like water around stones. Vanessa had aged visibly, new lines around her eyes, gray threading her once lustrous hair, shoulders slightly stooped from burdens both physical and emotional. Yet something in her direct gaze suggested an inner resilience he hadn't anticipated. Roland, she acknowledged him with a slight nod, neither fearful nor defiant. Vanessa, he returned evenly. I'm surprised to see you participating in community events. A flicker of something, pride, perhaps, crossed her features. I still live here. Despite everything, this remains my home. An uncomfortable silence stretched between them until Thomas discreetly stepped back, giving them a semblance of privacy within the public space. Are you satisfied? Vanessa finally asked, her voice low but steady. Seeing us all destroyed. Having your revenge. Did it heal what we broke in you? The directness of the question caught Roland off guard. For 10 years, he had scripted every interaction, anticipated every response, controlled every variable in his campaign of retribution. This simple query, devoid of excuses or recriminations, fell outside his carefully constructed scenarios. That's not a question you have the right to ask, he replied, his tone colder than he intended. Perhaps not, Vanessa conceded. But I'm asking anyway. Before Roland could respond, his attention was drawn to a commotion near the festival entrance. Wyatt had arrived unexpectedly from college and was now approaching them with determined strides. At 22, he carried himself with a confidence that reminded Roland painfully of himself at that age. I thought I might find you both here, Wyatt said, nodding to his mother before fixing Roland with an evaluating gaze. Mr. Mitchell, or should I call you Devon? The man who raised me for 12 years. Roland's practiced composure wavered momentarily. Roland will suffice. Devon no longer exists. So I've been told. Wyatt's expression remained neutral. I've spent months researching you both, trying to understand how the happy family from my childhood became this. Your mother can explain the deception better than I, Roland replied dismissively, preparing to leave. She has, Wyatt said, stopping Roland with his words. Extensively. What she did was unforgivable. What Bryson did was unforgivable. What Aunt Lena did was unforgivable. He paused significantly. What you've done since returning is equally so. Roland's eyes narrowed. You don't understand what was taken from me, don't I? Wyatt challenged. You lost your identity as a husband and father. I lost my identity as your son. You discovered your entire life was built on lies. So did I. His voice remained steady but intense. The difference is what we chose to do with that pain. Around them, the festival continued, children laughing, music playing, life proceeding with indifferent normalcy. Yet within their bubble of confrontation, time seemed suspended. You were never my son, Roland stated flatly, the words emerging more harshly than he intended. Biologically, no, Wyatt acknowledged. But for 12 years, you taught me to ride a bike, helped with my homework, coached my baseball team, checked for monsters under my bed. You showed me what integrity looked like. His expression hardened. Until you didn't. The accusation landed with unexpected force. Roland had spent a decade justifying his actions as righteous retribution, never considering how they might appear to the children caught in the crossfire. "You have no right to judge me," Roland responded, his carefully maintained control slipping. "Someone should," Wyatt replied simply. "The man who raised me would have wanted to be held accountable. He taught me that power without responsibility corrupts." The echo of Devon's own words from a lifetime ago, spoken to a young boy he had believed was his son, struck Roland like a physical blow. For the first time since implementing his revenge, he felt something crack in the armor of righteousness he had constructed around himself. Vanessa, who had remained silent during this exchange, finally spoke. "We deserved your anger, your hatred, even your vengeance. But they didn't." She gestured toward Wyatt. "They were children, innocent. Yet you've punished them as thoroughly as you've punished us." "I established trust funds," Roland protested. "I provided opportunities." "While systematically destroying their family," Vanessa interrupted. "While using them as pawns in your revenge against us." She shook her head. "The man I married would never have weaponized children, any children, regardless of biology." "The man you married died because of your betrayal," Roland snapped. "No," Wyatt interjected. "He died because of your choice. Our family was shattered by their betrayal, yes. But the systematic destruction of everyone connected to that betrayal? That was your decision alone." Roland found himself uncharacteristically speechless, the carefully constructed justifications for his decade-long vengeance suddenly seeming hollow under this direct challenge. "I have a class project," Wyatt continued, his tone softening slightly. "Interviewing people who've experienced profound betrayal and how they've moved beyond it, or haven't. Would you be willing to participate? Not as Roland Mitchell, billionaire. Not as Devon Hargrove, betrayed husband. Just as someone who made specific choices in response to pain." The request was so unexpected, so divorced from the script Roland had written for his triumphant return, that he found himself nodding before fully considering the implications. "Send the details to my office," he said finally, regaining some composure. "I make no promises." As Roland walked away, he felt strangely unsettled, as if the foundations of the identity he had so carefully constructed were shifting beneath his feet. That night, alone in his study, Roland reviewed the surveillance reports he still received daily about Vanessa, Lena, and Bryson. The detailed accounts of their struggles, once a source of satisfaction, now seemed oddly pathetic, the relentless monitoring of their diminished lives suddenly appearing more obsessive than justified. For the first time in 10 years, he questioned whether the man he had become was truly superior to the man he had been, and whether complete victory might ultimately prove more costly than the original defeat. The following week, Roland met with Wyatt at a neutral location, a quiet cafe on the outskirts of Millfield. The young man arrived with a digital recorder and a notebook, conducting himself with a professionalism that again reminded Roland painfully of himself. Their conversation, initially stilted, gradually evolved into something more substantive as Wyatt asked thoughtful questions about identity, forgiveness, justice, and the price of revenge. Roland found himself answering with unexpected honesty, the practiced narratives he had constructed giving way to more nuanced reflections. "Do you regret any of it?" Wyatt asked near the end of their session. Roland considered the question carefully. "I regret the necessity," he finally answered. "I regret that the only path to justice required becoming someone I might once have despised." "And was it justice?" Wyatt pressed. "Or vengeance dressed in justice's clothing?" The distinction lingered unanswered between them as they parted ways. In the days that followed, Roland found himself increasingly distracted from business matters, his thoughts returning to questions of legacy and meaning. The empire he had built, the power he wielded, the complete humiliation of those who had betrayed him, all felt strangely insufficient when measured against the simple accusation in Wyatt's eyes. "You showed me what integrity looked like. Until you didn't." 2 weeks later, without fully understanding his own motivations, Roland made a decision that would fundamentally alter the final chapter of his story. He contacted his attorney and revised certain arrangements regarding Millfield and those he had systematically destroyed. On a clear May morning, Roland summoned Vanessa, Lena, and via video conference, Bryson, to his office. Unlike the Christmas confrontation, this meeting was conducted without theatrical flourishes or psychological manipulation. just direct communication in the dispassionate environment of his corporate headquarters. I've made certain decisions regarding our situation, Roland began once they were assembled, his tone businesslike. Effective immediately, the alienation of affection lawsuit against Bryson is dismissed. Lena, the remaining financial penalties associated with your settlement are canceled. Vanessa, you'll find that restrictions limiting your employment options in Millfield have been lifted. Their expressions ranged from suspicious to cautiously hopeful. Why? Bryson asked from the video screen, his once handsome face now haggard from months of stress and declining circumstances. Consider it a business decision, Roland replied, unwilling to reveal the more complex truth. Maintaining active mechanisms of revenge requires resources better allocated elsewhere. You're not forgetting, Vanessa observed, studying him carefully. Or forgiving. No, Roland acknowledged. What you did remains unforgivable. But perpetuating the cycle of destruction has proven unsatisfying. He provided additional details about the practical implications of his decision, assets that would be transferred, restrictions that would be removed, opportunities that would be permitted. Throughout, he maintained a detached professionalism that revealed nothing of his internal conflict. As they prepared to leave, Lena, who had remained silent throughout the meeting, finally spoke. Do you ever wish you could go back? To before everything fell apart. Roland considered the question with unexpected gravity. No, he finally answered. That life was built on illusion. I prefer truth, however harsh, to comfortable deception. Even at the cost of becoming this version of yourself? Lena pressed. Roland offered no response, and they departed without further exchange. 1 month later, as summer settled over Millfield, Roland announced a restructuring of Reeves Mitchell Holdings. While maintaining controlling interest in the company, he would step back from day-to-day operations to focus on the newly established Hargrove Foundation, an organization dedicated to supporting victims of profound betrayal through legal assistance, counseling services, and educational initiatives. The choice to use his original surname for the foundation generated significant media interest, prompting inevitable questions about his past. Roland neither confirmed nor denied the speculation, allowing the mystery of his origins to enhance the foundation's profile while maintaining his carefully constructed public identity. At the foundation's inaugural gala, Roland delivered a brief speech that reflected his evolution without betraying his personal journey. Betrayal fundamentally alters how we perceive ourselves and others, he told the assembled guests. The path beyond such betrayal is neither forgiveness nor forgetting, but rather finding meaning in the transformation it necessitates. This foundation exists to support that transformation, to help others navigate the journey from victim to survivor to creator of a new reality. Among the attendees, observing from different corners of the ballroom, were Vanessa, Lena, and the 3 children. Their presence, neither acknowledged nor prevented, represented an uneasy truce rather than reconciliation. As summer yielded to autumn, Roland maintained his position as Millfield's most influential citizen while gradually reducing his active role in destroying those who had betrayed him. He neither sought their company nor actively avoided them, establishing a cold equilibrium that acknowledged their shared history without offering redemption. On Christmas Eve, exactly 11 years after Devon Hargrove had disappeared, Roland stood alone on the balcony of his mansion, watching snow fall gently over the lake that separated his current life from his former one. The lights of Millfield twinkled below, many in properties he owned, businesses he controlled, lives he influenced. He had achieved everything he had planned during those dark days after discovering Vanessa's betrayal. He had returned as a powerful man, systematically dismantled the lives of those who had wronged him, and established himself as the untouchable ruler of the community that had once witnessed his humiliation. Yet complete victory had proven more complex than he had anticipated. The man who had emerged from his decade-long metamorphosis, neither fully Devon nor entirely Roland, stood at the pinnacle of success while recognizing its limitations. The empire he had built couldn't restore what had been lost. The suffering he had inflicted couldn't heal his own wounds. As midnight approached, Roland raised a glass to his reflection in the darkness, acknowledging both the man he had been and the man he had become. 2 accounts settled, he murmured to the empty night, and ledgers that never quite balance. Below, in the town he now controlled, Those who had betrayed him continued their diminished lives, not destroyed completely as he had once intended, but permanently altered by his retribution. The children moved forward on their separate paths, carrying the complicated legacy of both their biological father's selfishness and their legal father's vengeance. And Roland Mitchell, once Devin Hargrove, reigned over his empire in solitary triumph, having sacrificed the capacity for trust and connection that might have made victory meaningful. In the end, betrayal had transformed everyone it touched, victim and perpetrator alike, into versions of themselves none had anticipated becoming, bound together in a complex web of consequences that neither time nor power could fully unravel. The price of betrayal, it seemed, was paid by all. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.